hard and fast, no clear theories on what's going to happen next. Is it going to continuously expand and fly away? Is it going to reach a certain point and then just stay there? Or is it going to collapse? All these theories are there, but nobody knows quite for sure. So the answers are to be found in Srimad Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. Today, let us look at some of those aspects. But first, we start with prayers. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayana Namaskritya. Naram Chaiva Narottamam. Devi Saraswati Vyasam. Tato Jayamudiraye. Astaprayeshu Abhadreshu. Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Bhagavati Uttama Shloke. Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Srimad Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8, the Supreme, text 17. Sahasra Yuga Paryantam. Sahasra Yuga Paryantam. Aha Yad Viduhu. Sorry. Brahmano Viduhu. Aharyad Brahmano Viduhu. Brahmano. Aharyad Brahmano Viduhu. Ratring Yuga Sahasra Antam. Ratring Yuga Sahasrantam. Ratring Yuga Sahasrantam. Te Aharatra Vidaha Janaha. Te Ahoratra Vido Janaha. Sahasra Yuga Paryantam. Aharyad Brahmano Viduhu. Ratrim Yuga Sahasrantam. Te Ahoratra Vido Janaha. Sahasra Yuga Paryantam. Aharyad Brahmano Viduhu. Ratrim Yuga Sahasrantam. Te Ahoratra Vido Janaha. Yuga Paryantam. Aharyad Brahmano Viduhu. Ratrim Yuga Sahasrantam. Te Ahoratra Vido Janaha. Sahasra Yuga Paryantam. Aharyad Brahmano Viduhu.
Ratrim Yuga Sahasrantam.
Ratrim Yuga Sahasrantam.
Te Ahoratra Vido Janaha.
Te Ahoratra Vido Janaha. Sahasra Yuga Paryantam.
Brahmano Viduhu.
Aharyad Brahmano Viduhu.
Sahasrantam.
Ratrim Yuga Sahasrantam.
Ratra Vido Janaha.
Te Ahoratra Vido Janaha.
Sahasra Yuga Paryantam.
Sahasra Yuga Paryantam.
Brahmano Viduhu.
Aharyad Brahmano Viduhu.
Sahasrantam.
Ratrim Yuga Sahasrantam.
Vido Janaha.
Te Ahoratra Vido Janaha.
Sahasra Yuga Paryantam.
Sahasra Yuga Paryantam.
Aharyad Brahmano Viduhu.
Aharyad Brahmano Viduhu.
Ratrim Yuga Sahasrantam.
Ratrim Yuga Sahasrantam.
Te Ahoratra Vido Janaha.
Te Ahoratra Vido Janaha.
Sahasrayuga Paryanta Aharyat Brahmano Viduho Ratri Yuga Sahasrantam Teyo Ratra Vido Janaha
Sahasrayuga Paryantam Aharyat Brahmano Viduhu Ratri Yuga Sahasrantam Tera Ratra Vido Janaha Paryantam Brahmano Viduhu Sahasranta Devo Ratra Vido Janaha Sahasrayuga Paryantam Aharyat Brahmano Viduhu Ratri Yuga Sahasranta Deho Ratri Vido Janaha
Alright. Aharyat Brahmano. Prabhu, we cannot hear your voice. Ratri Yuga Sahasranta Devo Ratra Vido Janaha Sahasrayuga Paryantam Aharyat Brahmano Viduhu Ratri Yuga Sahasrantam Devo Ratra Vido Janaha Sahasrayuga Paryantam Aharyat Brahmano Viduhu Ratri Yuga Sahasrantam Devo Ratra Vido Janaha. Anybody else online? Sahasrayuga Paryantam Aharyat Brahmano Viduhu Ratri Yuga Sahasrantam Devo Ratra Vido Janaha. Anyone else online? Synonyms: Sahasra, thousand; Yuga, millenniums; Paryantam, including; Ahaha, day; Yat, that; Brahmanaha, Brahma; Viduhu, know it; Ratrin, night; Yuga, millenniums; Sahasra Antam. Similarly, at the end of 1000, Te, that; Aharatra, day and night; Vidaha, Understand. Janaha. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation. By human calculation, 1,000 ages taken together is the duration of Brahma's one day, and such also is the duration of his night. Translation with repetition. By human calculation, 1,000 ages taken together is the duration of Brahma's one day, and such also is the duration of his night. Okay. The duration of the material universes is limited. It is manifested in cycles of kalpas. A kalpa is a day of Brahma, and one day of Brahma consists of 1,000 cycles of 4 yugas or ages: Satya, Treta, Dwapara, and Kali. The cycle of Satya is characterized by virtue, wisdom, and religion, there being practically no ignorance and vice. And the Yuga lasts 1,728,000 years. In the Treta Yuga, vice is introduced, and this Yuga lasts for 1,296,000 years. In the Dwapara Yuga, there is an even greater decline in virtue and religion, vice increasing, and this Yuga lasts for 864,000 years. And finally, in Kali Yuga, the Yuga we have now been experiencing over the past 5,000 years, there is an abundance of strife, ignorance, irreligion, and vice, true virtue being practically non-existent. And this Yuga lasts for 432,000 years. In Kali Yuga, vice increases to such a point that at the termination of the Yuga, the Supreme Lord himself appears as the Kalki avatar, vanquishes the demons, saves his devotees, and commences another Satya Yuga. Then the process is set rolling again. These 4 yugas, rotating 1,000 times, comprise one day of Brahma, the creator God, the lowercase g. And the same number comprise one night. Brahma lives 100 such years and then dies. These 100 years, by earth calculations, total to 311 trillion 40 billion earth years. By these calculations, the life of Brahma seems fantastic and interminable, but from the viewpoint of eternity, it is as brief as a lightning flash. In the causal ocean, there are innumerable Brahmas rising and disappearing like bubbles in the Atlantic. Brahma and his creation are all part of the material universe, and therefore they are in constant flux. In the material universe, not even Brahma is free from the process of birth, old age, disease, and death. Brahma, however, is directly engaged in the service of the Supreme Lord, the management of this universe. Therefore, he at once attains liberation. Elevated sannyasis are promoted to Brahma's particular planet, Brahmaloka, which is the highest planet in the material universe, and which survives all the heavenly planets in the upper strata of the planetary system. But in due course, Brahma and all inhabitants of Brahmaloka are subject to death according to the law of the material nature. Thus ends a wonderful transcendental purport. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna-Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Asatyachalarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaurabhakta Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Right, so today we are reading this verse, which has been quoted several times by Srila Prabhupada, and in the purport he has given detailed calculations that are, again, the calculations are also quoted many times in various Bhagavatam reports and lectures by Srila Prabhupada, and is extremely startling and revealing information about the universe, the various planetary systems. For anyone who is scientifically minded or has curiosity about the universe, which is basically all of humanity. From the day that humanity has existed, we always look up in the sky and look for answers. We're looking for meaning in the stars, and we're looking to see patterns in the stars, the planets, the sky above us. Of course, those who are born in the current generation, Gen Z and Gen Alpha, are not so fortunate because the skies are so polluted with light and dust that it's very difficult to see the stars. Hardly 5 or 6 days in a year you can see. But for the older people like myself, we have grown up seeing stars practically every night. There were not so many lights in the cities. Even the cities were not having so much light at night time. Now all the cities, there's a glow. Right? You look up in the sky at night, there's a glow in the sky which comes from the city lights. So it's very difficult to see the stars in the sky. But nevertheless, the curiosity is there. And the curiosity has been answered in the pages of Vedic literature. Srila Prabhupada is bringing that essence of all that information in a concise way, just 2 or 3 paragraphs. To read this information, to understand this, it would have taken years and years and years of study of so many Vedic literatures. Even if you were to think that this information is to be found in Srimad Bhagavatam, because some of the information is from today's verse, the purport, and some of the information is not from today's verse. They are from some other verses. For you to have read all those 18,000 slokas of Srimad Bhagavatam and all the other Vedic literatures, all the Puranas and Upanishads, to come to this information, to this summary, would have been practically impossible for us. And we would have thought that, oh, Vedic wisdom does not answer my curiosity, and we would have gone somewhere else. So knowing our limitations, Srila Prabhupada has very kindly summarized the essence of the information in today's verse, and he also quotes it in many, many places. So let us pay attention to this verse. Sahasra yuga paryantam aharyat brahmano viduhu ratrim yuga sahasrantam te ahoratra vidojanam. So Sahasra, the word Sahasra is coming twice here. Sahasra in Sanskrit means 1,000. Yuga. The word Yuga is sometimes used in a generic sense, just to mean a millennium or an age or a period of time. But here it means something specific. Although in the translation, the Yuga, the word-to-word translation it is translated as millenniums. And then in the full sentence translation, it is said 1,000 ages. So these 2 words are fairly vague as to what they mean. Millennium, what does it mean? Because we hear of the term millennium kids, right? So millennium is like 1,000 years. 2,000, anybody born after the turn of the century may be called a millennium kid. So is that what that means here by saying millennium? So because the Sanskrit division of time as it is in the Vedic literature, it does not have a parallel English language. So to explain the concept, although the words millennium and ages have been used, the actual meaning of that will be explained in the purport. So for now, just consider the term yuga to be some period of time. We'll see what that means. Paryantam is including. Aha is translated as day. Yad brahmano viduhu. So 1 day of Brahma, brahmano viduhu, here Brahma, brahmanaha. Brahmanaha here he refers to Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma is a secondary creator. He is the topmost living entity in the universe. It is the post to which all of us can aspire to reach if we wanted to. Nobody can become Krishna. But Brahma is the post that any living entity can achieve. If there is eligibility, can achieve. There is empowerment in that post that comes with that post to conduct the affairs of the universe. And so here Brahmanaha is translated as Brahma. Ratrim, similarly, there is a night time. Ratri means night. Yuga Sahasrantam. So similarly, there are 1,000 ages, 1,000 yugas, 1,000 millenniums pass, and that forms a night of Brahma. So by human calculation, 1,000 ages taken together is the duration of Brahma's one day, and such also is the duration of his night. This is the translation. So before we go deeper, I just want to show a very, very high level overview of chapter 8, where we are in the context, because we're in text number 17. What have we studied? We had seen this overview once before. The first 4 verses of 8th chapter are answering Krishna's questions to Arjuna. And there's one easy way. Often we have acronyms for different sections of Bhagavad Gita. So in chapter 8, the acronym is DEAD, dead. Dead. Easy to remember? Dead. Okay. So DEAD, dead. That is acronym. So the first section, verses 1 to 4, you can remember it as D stands for doubts. So Arjuna had a lot of doubts. Krishna is clarifying those doubts. E stands for end of life. And that covers verses 5 to 8. End of life, when we are coming to the end of our life, we have to remember Krishna. So those 4 verses there, 5 to 8, they are talking about how one can remember Krishna at the time of death. That stands for E, end of life. And then the next 5 verses, 9 to 13, they are talking about remembering Krishna through meditation. And that is, acronym for that is A, attaining the Supreme. And then the remaining, then there is a big section of 14 to 22. That is 9 verses or 8 verses, whatever that is. That is talking about, that is also part of, so the attaining the Supreme covers 9 to 22. It's a very, very large section. And that has 3 subsections in it. There are 5 verses that talk about remembering Krishna through meditation. Then there are 3 verses that talk about pure devotional service. We already covered all of that. And then now we have the section which is the last part of attaining the Supreme, comparing the material and spiritual worlds. So you'll see that today there is description of material world, and that is going to continue for a couple of verses more. And then Krishna will draw contrast with this material world with the spiritual world. And then he'll say that spiritual world, which is completely different from this material world, that is my abode. So there's a point to this description. So you may think, why is there such a detailed description of the material world? After all, we are being told that material world is not so important. You have to get out of this. So why these kind of cosmological details are being shared with us? And that is because Krishna is trying to draw a contrast. He's trying to show these details so that we can draw a contrast later. So that's why this is all important. And then the last section, of course, of the 8th chapter talks about devotion. So we will see that later. So now we are beginning a new section here, comparing the material and spiritual worlds. So the dead acronym, you can remember with this ghastly image, the skeleton. Death occupies a very important place in various cultures all over the world. It is said that in some cultures, they keep a skeleton or some skull in some within area within their property to remind themselves of their imminent death. And this way, they remain sober, and they're always thinking that, okay, I'm not here forever. So let me be moderate in my efforts, my endeavors, because whatever you do, there is a saying in English that you cannot take it with you, right? So whatever you do, there has to be moderation in that, because we get so much caught up in our endeavors and our efforts that we sometimes forget that all these efforts will come to a naught when we have to leave the body. And it is not that we have to leave the body only when we become 100 years of age. All around us, we are seeing how people are forced to leave their body at different ages. There is no telling when death will come. And therefore, as a sign of remembrance of our own mortality, some cultures do this. The point is that one should remember our mortality and plan for that. Like what is the way in which we should quit our body? That's a lot of that has been talked about in the chapter 8. Then one starts to think, okay, this material body is after all made of matter, and one day this body is no longer fit for habitation. What about the universe? Does the universe also get destroyed at some point, just like this body is destroyed? That is a natural question that comes. So that is a topic that we're trying to understand today. Is the universe eternal, or what does this purport say that we read today? There are three key takeaways that I want to share from the purport today. First is to understand the vastness of the scale of time that has been described in the Vedic literature. It is just an incredible breadth of time, time scale that has been described. It's very, very difficult to fathom with our limited intelligence. Very difficult to conceptualize it. And yet, this actually demonstrates that this knowledge could not have been conceived by human beings. Even today, with all the modern scientific knowledge, such a vast scale of time is very, very difficult to fathom. And this, even if somebody is thinking that some human being cooked up this information some thousands of years back, people were sitting in caves and then they were thinking about some philosophy and they cooked up some philosophy. This is because there's one dominant theory that sociologists and scientists have, that human beings created religion just to keep some peace and quiet in society. But just imagine that even today, thinking about this kind of vast scales of time is so difficult to conceptualize, even for scientists, what to speak of ordinary men. Then how could somebody thousands of years back have conceptualized such vast scales of time? And the principles of relativity and principles of difference in the elapsed period of time, in perception of time. These are principles that have been introduced by modern physicists at the turn of the century, at the turn of the 20th century. Prior to that, in the 19th century and before, those concepts are not even known to the modern scientists. For example, the concept that so let's say that the planet Earth, it is rotating around its axis, and therefore we observe day and night. Correct? Is it called rotation or revolution? What is it called? Rotation. So it's rotating around its axis, and we observe day and night. And it also revolves around the sun. Therefore, we observe seasons, change of seasons a year because of the tilt of the axis. And we calculate a year based on either where it came back to the sun in relation to the stars behind the sun. Correct? That's called a sidereal year. It refers to the star. Or reference to the sun itself, it's called solar year. Like that, there are different ways to measure the year. So these are all related to measurements taken on Earth. But if somebody were to go on, say, some other planet, Mercury, Mars, Venus, Jupiter, these measurements will be different, naturally, correct? Because the rotational speed of Jupiter is different. It takes a different amount of time to rotate on its axis. So if there was a person in Jupiter, he will experience a different day, duration of a day, correct? A person in some other planet will experience different duration of a day. Their year will also be different, correct? So therefore, if their lifespan were to be measured in a certain number of years, when they describe it in their own words, and when we describe our lifespan in our words, the meaning of the day, meaning of a year is very different. Now, we know this today. Why? Because our physicists, modern physics, they have said that the Earth is rotating, etc. And then there is a revolution around the sun. But here we are seeing that in the Vedic literature, because thousands of years before, this information is taken for granted. It is not even presented as some great shakes. That is, it's not some major revolutionary discovery. It's just taken as a matter of fact. Of course, it is like that. So just imagine the state of awareness or enlightenment of the sages of the bygone era. And how this is happening. So this is actually the most important thing to remember here is this information, knowledge is coming from the descending process of knowledge dissemination. There are two ways that we can learn. There are two ways that knowledge can be gained. One is called the ascending process of knowledge. The other is called the descending process of knowledge. The way that we are used to learning, our conditioned way of learning throughout our educational system that we have experienced is called ascending process of knowledge. It falls into the category of ascending process of knowledge because it is knowledge that has been gathered by people endeavoring to understand the environment around them, the universe around them, the interaction with the universe through their own endeavors, through their own senses. So they perform experiments, they conduct, they have some theories, they conduct some experiments, and then it's either proved or disproved. And then when it's disproved, they refine the theory, and then they again conduct some experiments. So they're learning by experimenting, learning by doing. This is called the ascending process. They're discovering knowledge on their own. This is called the ascending process, and knowledge gained like this is always subject to correction. Why? Because our senses are defective. Today, I form a theory, and then I'm trying to test something. First of all, my test could be incorrectly conducted. Secondly, the fact that my test worked in one situation does not mean it will work in another situation. Most of the theories in physics, any field of science, other than mathematics, you have science, you have mathematics. So in the field of science, the theories that are formed on the basis of inductive reasoning. There are different kinds of logic and reasoning that can be used to prove a theorem or prove a scientific fact. Certain kinds of proofs are called through inductive reasoning, and the other kind of proof is called deductive reasoning. Let us say I am saying prove that 1 plus 1 equal to 2. How would you do it? How will you prove that 1 plus 1 is 2? Please give a mic. Give the time mic. It's easy to give to other people.
First by negation,
How do you negate?
proving that is first we'll say that is false. 1 plus 1, 2 is not.
Is false. Okay, we assume 1 plus 1, 2 is false. Okay.
Then prove by statements. One, some I don't know.
Okay. Anybody else would like to try? How do you prove 1 plus 1 equal to 2? Anyone other than Patrick, he knows the answer.
So 1 plus 1 is like kind of fact, like 1 plus 1 equals to 2. So
What do you mean by fact?
so like when there are some rules, like what we do is when there is something we need to prove, we use some stated or proven facts.
Axiomatic truth.
Yes.
You're referring to axiomatic truth. Anybody else? When you say axiomatic truth, what it means is self-evident truth. Truth does not require any proof. That's what you are saying. 1 plus 1 is 2. True. 1 plus 1 is 2 is a self-evident truth. Therefore, does not require any proof. That's what you're trying to say. Okay. So, any other answers? How do you prove 1 plus 1 is 2?
First, you define what one is, then you define what addition is, and then acknowledging those two truths, you do the process of addition, and then you get 2.
So, how do you define addition?
Now that I can't answer.
Okay. Anybody else would like to try? Good try. Very good try. Online? Anybody? How do you prove 1 plus 1 is 2? Online proof.
So by definition, 2 is defined in a way that it corresponds to the addition of 1 and 1. So that's by definition, it is reduced to the.
Yes. That's almost there. Exactly, very close to what J. Prabhu said. So the correct answer is the number 2 is defined as a set of 2 ones by set theory. The numbers are defined in set theory, and the number 2 is defined because somebody has to say, I say 1 plus 1 is 2. Then, like what J. Prabhu said, somebody should say, what do you mean by 2? right? That two, the word two itself is undefined yet. So the number two is defined in the mathematics as a set of two ones. So therefore, two is 1 plus 1, just because that's how I've defined it. This is called deductive reasoning. It's called deductive reasoning. You first have a statement and then you deduce from that statement. And inductive reasoning, an example would be different. Let us say let's say we make a postulate that every person who's born must die. Every person who's born must die. This is a theory. I'm putting forward a theory. Now, no, we have not met every person who's born, correct? But we say, look, I know all the people around me, and everybody who has been born has been dying. That's what we have seen. Since we are yet to observe anyone who was born but did not die, we have never observed anybody like that. Everybody that we have seen so far, who is born has died. Therefore, everyone who's born must die. This is called inductive reasoning. Because you can never be sure that one day somebody may be born who does not die. Right? That fact that your theory is only tested by a sample, a known sample, a limited sample, shows that one day it could be disproved. All of science falls into the category of inductive reasoning. The theory of light, the theory of reflection, the theory of refraction, Newtonian physics, everything falls in the category of inductive reasoning. Therefore, that's why scientific theories are constantly being modified. Theories that were formulated 500 years back are not true today because new facts have come into picture and the inductive reasoning was proven false because like Newton's laws don't work in quantum world, right? They don't work when the particles are extremely small. Newtonian laws don't work there. So they had to introduce quantum mechanics for that. So like this, any information which is gathered through inductive reasoning is always faulty. Vedic literature is given to us on the basis of deductive reasoning. Information, like for example, if you were to find out in Brahmaloka what is the duration of a day, we'll have to postulate something. Maybe we go to Brahmaloka, measure it, and then that will be called ascending process of knowledge. But the descending process of knowledge is taken from Krishna. Krishna is the perfect source of knowledge. When he says that a day of Brahma is X, we simply take that. And from that you can derive, oh, if one day is X, that means 1 year should be Y. That's mathematical multiplication. But the deductive reasoning means you take the information which is given in Vedic literature as a fact, as a definition, as a data that's been given to you by a perfect source, just as we define two as a set of two ones. That cannot be wrong because you defined it. Similarly, Krishna is a perfect source, he is giving you certain information. You take that information and deduce other information that you want from that. That is allowed. So you take the information. If Krishna says that in the material world, everyone who comes into being must die one day, you take that as a fact. That's all. That is deductive reasoning. So information which is given by the Vedic literature is deductive reasoning. And that's how such insightful and such detailed information about the universe has been given to us thousands of years back, and sages did not have to go to all these different planets and measure it for themselves. They knew it because the information has been given to them from a perfect source. So let's look at what is this time scale that has been talked about cosmos. So first, there was a mention of the word millennium or ages. So there is Kali Yuga, which is 432,000 years. So far, 5,000 years have elapsed. Right? So how many years are remaining? 427,000 years are remaining in Kali Yuga. Then next, prior to Kali Yuga, you have Dwapara Yuga. And there is a mathematical progression here, which makes it easy to remember. The duration of Dwapara Yuga is 2 times the duration of Kali Yuga. So you see that 864,000 is exactly twice the duration of Kali Yuga. And prior to that, there is Treta Yuga. Treta Yuga is 3 times the duration of Kali Yuga. So you see that 1.296 million is exactly 3 times the duration of Kali Yuga. And then Satya Yuga, that's 1.728 million, that's 4 times the duration of Kali Yuga. So Kali Yuga is X, Dwapara Yuga is 2X, Treta Yuga is 3X, Satya Yuga is 4X. And when you add all these together, what happens? X plus 2X plus 3X plus 4X is, how many X is that? 10x. Who said that? So 10x. So if you add all of this, it is 10x. That's the way to remember it. If you want to remember, what is this complete set of time, which is the duration of Satya, Treta, Dwapara, Kali, this entire cycle. Now, why is it important to remember? Because this is actually very fundamental information about the universe and the time scale. And it has great significance on everything we do. And all our devotional service, everything that we do is directly related to what age we are living in. Because the age that we are living in defines the environment that we find ourselves. The environment that we find ourselves has a great influence on what kind of devotional service practices that we can aspire to even to take up. Because in Satya Yuga, facilities are different. Just as when I was a kid, facilities were different. When the next generation were kids, facilities are different. 100 years back, when my parents were kids, the facilities were different. So similarly, in Satya Yuga, the facilities were very different. And in Treta Yuga, they were different. Let's see, we will see very soon what those differences were. But the bottom line is that it's extremely important for us to understand these durations of time, because it has a direct bearing on why we take up Krishna consciousness in the specific way, the specific method that we're taking up. So when Kali Yuga finishes, what happens? In the purport, it has been described that everything there is practically no including what is it called when a human being eats another human being? Cannibalism. Cannibalism becomes rampant. Very few people would be pious and sane. So essentially, it will be a society of cannibals with absolutely no scruples. That will be a society that will be there for the duration, most of the duration of the Kali Yuga. We are right now in the beginning stages of Kali Yuga. That's why we are seeing still that there is some reasonable law-based society that is there right now. But very soon, it will deteriorate. Just 9,500 more years, it will be unlivable. So, what happens after Kali Yuga? The Lord comes, advents, and kills all the demoniac people and re-establishes Satya Yuga. So, let us take a look at this time multiplier that has been given in the verse today. So, in the Bhuloka, one cycle of Satya, Treta, Dwapara, and Kali. This cycle is called Mahayuga, or simply in today's verse, it is being called as Yuga. They both mean the same thing, Mahayuga or Yuga. So that duration we saw last time was 10x of Kali Yuga. How much was Kali Yuga? What is the duration of Kali Yuga? 432,000 years, correct? So 10 times that is 4.32 billion, right? 400,000 times 10, 4 billion. So the complete duration of Satya and Treta and Dwapara and Kali, the combined cycle of all these four together is 4.32 billion years. When you have this combined cycle of 4.32 billion years, and this repeats 1,000 times, which means how much? 4.32 billion years. That constitutes one daytime of Brahma. So Brahma's day is divided into two parts, daytime and nighttime. So the daytime, which we can think of right now in our earthly context as 12 hours, that daytime corresponds to 4.32 billion Earth years. And similarly, there is a nighttime of 4.32 billion Earth years, which constitutes as night. So the entire day of Brahma, which is a 24-hour period for Brahma, is equal to 8.64 billion years on Bhuloka, on Earth. Now, there is, in the purport, there is also mention of duration of time in higher planetary systems, which means when you say higher planetary systems, these are planetary systems that are between Brahmaloka, which is the highest planetary system, and the Bhuloka, which is the middle planetary system. So between this, you have intermediate planetary systems. They are called higher planetary systems. Here, the duration of life is considerably longer than it is on Earth, and the time scales are also bigger, but they are not as big as in Brahmaloka. They are not as big. So, in fact, in the Vedic literature, the time scales of Brahmaloka has been described in terms of the calendars being followed by higher planetary systems. So if you see the way in which Brahma's day has been described in the scriptures, here we are seeing today's verse, Sahasra Yuga Paryantam. That is from Earth calendar. Earth, in reference to Earth, correct? But there are other scriptures, other places, where there's a reference to the number of, what is the relationship between the Brahma's day in relation to higher planetary systems. And there is also a equation given with respect to the time in higher planetary systems versus Earth. So all of them are available. So I've just put these for ease quick reference. The 4.32 million years of Earth, it corresponds to 12,000 years in higher planetary systems. And those 12,000, let's just say Svargaluka for ease of reference. Svargaluka is higher planetary systems. So in Svargaluka, 12,000 years of daytime corresponds to one daytime of Brahma. So similarly, you also have 12,000 years of daytime, which is nighttime of Brahma. So 24,000 years of daytime, Svargaluka, corresponds to an entire day, 24 hours day of Brahma. So the equation between these higher planetary systems and Earth, what is that equation? That's what I've given here above. One day in this higher planetary system, the daytime, right, the 12-hour equivalent, that corresponds to 6 months on Earth. And similarly, their nighttime corresponds to another 6 months. So if you look at their entire day, one day on higher planetary systems, that corresponds to 1 year on Earth. So we might have spent a year, but in higher planetary systems, it's just 1 day. So that's how their duration of life is much longer. So they also live for 100 years, just as we live for 100 years here. They live for their 100 years. But their year is much longer because the day on their planet, for them it is just one day, right? So as far as they are concerned in their planet, they will experience a lifetime similar to how we experience here. But when you see their lifetime from Earth's perspective, it will seem like a very long duration. So it's this very deep concept, but see how it is given in the Vedic literature. And this kind of the concept has been corroborated by modern science after struggling so much with physics and cosmology and astronomy, etc. So we have already discussed this. 4.32 billion years on Earth is 12 billion years in higher planetary systems, and that corresponds to daytime of Brahma, which means if you add the day and night, 8.64 billion years corresponds to 24 million years on higher planetary system is 1 full day. So what happens at the end of this 4.32 billion years on Earth? So 1 day of Brahma is over. Now it's about to be nighttime. Now what happens? That will come next verse. So that is being described. Next verse, what's going to happen? There's a devastation. It's called the partial devastation. Essentially all the planetary systems up to Brahmaloka are inundated. And there is complete devastation of all living entities in all the planetary systems except Brahmaloka. Everybody dies. But those who are in the Brahmaloka, they survive. And then the next day, a new day of Brahma dawns. So for the whole duration of night, there is no creation. Everything is dead except for people in Brahmaloka, they're alive. The next day, there's again creation. Again, all these planets are repopulated people. So, and then you'll see in the next 2 or 3 verses how the cycle repeats. Day after day after day, living entities are coming into existence, and a day after day of Brahma. And then again at night time, they're annihilated. Again, next day, they're created. This goes on day after day for the whole year of Brahma. And like this, Brahma lives for 100 years. At the end of 100 years, Brahma also dies. The entire universe is devastated. So this duration of entire universe is, when you calculate that, when you calculate the 1 day of Brahma times 30 days in a month of Brahma, times 12 months in a year for Brahma, times 100 such years, that comes to 311 trillion. That's a typo there. It should be 40 billion years, not billion. It's 40 billion. We just correct that. $300 trillion, 40 billion Earth years. This corresponds to entire life of Brahma. And after that, what happens? The universe is also destroyed. These universes are like bubbles in the cosmic ocean. in the purport it is being described as bubbles in the Atlantic Ocean. You'll see that in the ocean, there are waves that fall, and then when the waves are falling, there are bubbles that are created, froth that is created. And then how long will those bubbles last? When the bubble is created in the ocean, how long does it last?
So the next wave comes.
Not even. The bubble is just burst immediately. Yeah, just pops, right? Bubble is formed, it pops. So these universes are compared to those bubbles. So this water, and what is the duration of that? 311 trillion, 40 million years, and that's just a bubble. That's just a bubble. And in this interesting fact, you see here in the Swargalokas, how 864 billion years and then 8.64 billion on Earth, how that is matching 8.64, those numbers. They're all very symmetric. This universe is a very, very symmetric fashion. So, let's look at what these qualities of yugas are, because we've been looking at all these yugas, Satya Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, Treta Yuga. What's the difference between them? So that is being described in today's verse, that in Satya Yuga is full of virtue and wisdom and religion, almost no ignorance or vice. So, when you're born in Satya Yuga, you're automatically enlightened. You're automatically not in ignorance. You already know that you're not the body. You already know that you're the spirit soul. A person taking birth in Satya Yuga is already having those characteristics. When they go out, let us say I'm going out to take a taxi or something in Satya Yuga, the taxi driver, Uber driver, he will know that I'm not the body. I go to buy milk in the shop. That person will know that he's not the body, she or whoever it is, right? So the environment in Satya Yuga is very, very, very conducive for self-realization. You can say that practically people are self-realized. People are not cheating each other. It's a very, you can say, utopian society, they say, and it says it's imaginary, but actually it's not. Satya Yuga was present. And then Bhagavad, the pages of Bhagavatam, there are many, many descriptions of various leelas of the Lord that happened in that period. And when Treta Yuga comes, there is vice that is introduced. Vice. So there is some blackness in the heart of individuals, little bit. It is introduced. Not that it's very prominent, but it is introduced. So you cannot 100% trust somebody. Sometimes somebody somewhere will cheat you. It could be in various ways, some small way. Even then, the cheating happens. It will be a shock to everybody else because they don't expect it. But it happens. And then in Dwapara Yuga, that declines. There's a decline in virtue and religion. Truthfulness declines. A lot of things decline, and there is increase in vice. And when it comes to Kali Yuga, there is abundance of vice and ignorance. How many people in Kali Yuga know that I'm not the body? Nobody. There's nobody. Very, very only pure devotees are there, and then they are trying to wake us up. They're trying to wake us up from our slumber, from our deep ignorance. They're trying to enlighten us, right? But none of us are aware of it, and even when you are being woken up, you refuse to wake up. So that is the state of Kali. Almost no virtue at all remaining. Is completely gone, practically gone. And remember, we are at the beginning of Kali Yuga. Just 5,000 years have happened in Kali Yuga. 427,000 more years are there. So it's going to decline rapidly. So what you see today, whatever is remaining, is going to decline very rapidly. So in Bhagavatam, there is a description of the qualities of Kali. Prayen alpayusha sabhyam kalavasmin yuge jana anda sumandamatayo madhavakya upatrita. So in the age of Kali, Prayen alpayusha, people at this age have very low lifespan. Lifespan is reduced. And kalavasmin yuge jana manda sumandamatayo, lazy, less intelligent. Mandabhagya, unfortunate. Upatrita, always disturbed. O learned one, in this iron age of Kali, men almost always but have short lives. They are quarrelsome, lazy, misguided, unlucky, above all, always disturbed. These are the qualities of negative qualities of the age of Kali. So you have what are the specific problems of Kali? So we saw those qualities. In the purport of that particular verse, Prabhupada gives even more problems. Why is it that we have such short lifespans? Why is it that in Kali Yuga we have got this problem, right? So he says the reason for short lifespan is really because our energy has been taken away. There are many factors around us that are sapping away the very vitality of our human energy. And this vitality of human energy is being taken away by some of these factors are written here, but there are many more which are written in the purport of Srimad Bhagavatam 1.1.10. Irregular habits. So whatever we are doing, like waking up, we are not able to wake up every day at the same time. Most basic thing. Every day you have to wake up at the same time is not happening. Every day sleeping at the same time, not happening. Eating properly, not happening. Taking bath at the right time, properly, not happening. Simply washing hands, washing mouth, very basic hygiene habits, not happening. So when you have irregular habits, it takes away the energy because the health goes down. Overeating. Problem is not because of less food in Kali Yuga. People think there's not a shortage of food. Problem is not shortage of food. Problem is overeating. We are unable to control our appetite. We are just control our portion size. Over sense gratification. Over dependence on somebody else's mercy. Like today, even if you see 100 years back versus now, the economy is so interconnected that we cannot simply do one thing on our own. At every step, we require somebody else to do something for us, like the phone, everything for which we depend on the phone. Correct? The phone is produced by somebody else. The software is even just to produce one phone. How many people are involved? Thousands of people involved, right? Just to code the software, the hardware, every single part in that, every chip is coming from some different vendor. So somewhere in the world, if something goes for a toss, the phone doesn't come, our whole life goes topsy-turvy. Every single thing, food, you go and buy from the market. We're not growing our own food anymore, right? We go to the market to buy the food. So how many people are involved in getting the food in the market? Such a big supply chain, cold chain, hot chain, this and that, like so many dependencies that we have got, right? So all those things, they're sapping away our vitality. Our energy is going away. Very simply, if we had 1 acre of land, Prabhupada says, you can grow whatever you want and eat and you can subsist your human life on that. Just 1 acre of land. But unfortunately, we have made our life so complicated. And all of this takes away the vitality of life and short lifespan reduces. And other things that happen, we become spiritually lazy. We are living in an age of bad educational system. Our teachers are misguided. They have no idea about the purpose of life. They are teaching us about how to nicely hit a hammer on a nail. That's the primary purpose of our education. Is how do you nail nicely? How do you cut something? Those are the things that we learn. Fortunate people learn how to take a film. But for most other people, it's just basic, cutting a saw or things which just manipulating matter, right? Gambling all around us, just excessive, surrounded by sporting activities, cinemas, libraries which teach all kinds of mundane literature. So all of these things, what do? They result in creation of manufactured religion. People say that this is the goal of life. You should go win the Olympics. This should be the goal of life. You should become the greatest politician. This should be the goal of life. You should be the CEO. That's the goal of life. You should start your own business. That should be the goal of life. Like this, people are creating so many goals of life. And all of us are getting trapped by those goals, depending on what appeals to us. We just take, I like that. They're all religions. There's no scientific basis for it. Somebody says your goal of life should be to start your own business and give employment to many people. By doing this, you will grow the economy. Oh, it sounds like such a great religion. I want to follow that religion. And people spend their entire life doing that. So there's no harm in sustaining one's body, right? And one has to work in order to maintain one's livelihood. That's not the problem. But to make that the goal of life, that is called manufactured religion. And that gives rise to sinful activities. Because actual religion has been forgotten. In the quest for making this, becoming a CEO or becoming a CIO or vice president or whatever it is, people can do anything. They can go to any extent. That's why we see that so many people with such good upbringing, such good education, they have no hesitation in committing fraud, in illicit sex, in immoral activities. They have no, because the religion is something else. They have adopted a certain goal of life. So, but there is in spite of all these faults, there is one great quality of Kali Yuga. Kale dosha nidhe rajan asti eko mahamuna kirtanadeva krishnasya mukta sangha paramakaji. Kale dosha nidhe, the Kali Yuga is an ocean of faults. Dosha nidhe, nidhe means ocean. Dosha means faults. Kali Yuga is an ocean of faults, but it has one great quality. What's that one great quality? Kirtanadeva krishnasya mukta sangha paramakaji. Simply by performing Sankirtana about the Supreme Lord Krishna, one can become completely free, reach the transcendental position. My dear King, although Kali Yuga is an ocean of faults, there is still one good quality about this age. Simply by chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, one can become free from material bondage and promoted to transcendental kingdom. And one need not think that by taking up to the chanting of Hare Krishna Mahamantra, that one is losing out on some other benefits or processes that were adopted earlier. Somebody may think that, oh, you are doing chanting of Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Oh, no, I think, no, I do meditation, this is superior. Because I have, there is it's just, so many yogis perform meditation and they achieve perfection. That's a superior process. So that is also clarified that in the Satya Yuga, the process of liberation was through process of achieving perfection was through meditation. Yute yad dhyayato Vishnu. So Satya Yuga was free of disturbances. You could meditate for long periods of time. Tretayam yad yajato makhaihi. In Treta Yuga, people could achieve perfection through yagyas, through great sacrificial performances. Dwapara paricharyayam. In Dwapara Yuga, people would achieve perfection through elaborate deity worship. But here today, if you want to get some flowers for the deity, it's not available. You want to get ghee, not available. Priest for chanting mantras, not available. The resources for building a temple, not available. So in Kali Yuga, all these processes of meditation or yajna, sacrifice, they're all faulty. You cannot achieve perfection through those. You can do it, but you cannot get perfection through that. Kalau tat hari kirtan. In the age of Kali, you can achieve perfection only by performing Hari Kirtan, no other process. Whatever result was obtained in Satya Yuga by meditating on Vishnu, in Treta Yuga by performing sacrifices, and in Dwapara Yuga by serving the Lord's lotus feet, can be obtained in the Kali Yuga simply by chanting Hare Krishna Maha. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. So our lives have become so busy. We are thinking that we have no time for all this. Because I have so many goals, I have so many things to do, I have so many milestones to achieve. But you saw today's verse. All of that activity is but, even if you assume that you're living for 100 years, that what a small drop that is in the bubble of cosmic ocean. That 311 trillion years, 40 million years, that is life of Brahma. 4.32 billion years is just one day of Brahma. So how many times are we going to die? And how many times are we going to be born just to get one day of Brahma? How many times? Right? 4.32 billion divided by 100, whatever that is. 43 million times. So 43 million times you're going to die. All of us are going to die. I'm also going to die. 43 million times. And then I was going to repeat again. That's just one day of Brahma. We are thinking that we are so busy that death will not even come. We are working like that, but actually we are going to die. We have already died billions of times. We are going to die billions of more times. It's not that we have no time. Actually, there is a great personality by the name Stephen Covey, very popular, famous personality, and he has created a program called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. One of them is called First Things First. First things first. It means organizing and executing around your most important priorities. It is living and being driven by the principles you value the most, not by the agendas and forces around you. So we have to prioritize our time by putting what is most important first, and then we put what is second important next. Often what we do is we fill our day with small things that we can just get out of the way. But end of it, what happens? We have only achieved the small things. The important things we could never achieve because we never set aside the time for it. We never set aside a solid time, 2 hours of time, to chant 16 rounds of Hare Krishna Maha Mantra continuously without breaking. Most important thing for us. But we didn't set this time. We are thinking that I have got many things to do. In between, whenever I get time, I will chant my 16 rounds. So what happens? Your entire day is filled with lots of things to do. But the most important thing got missed out. And this is not some just Vedic literature kind of. This is a very, very powerful process that has been given by Stephen Covey, extremely appreciated by people all over the world, and all kinds of people in all walks of life have appreciated this, followed this, and greatly benefited. So we should all take a resolve that we should identify what are the most important things in our life, most important things, and make sure that we prioritize time for those most important things. Because if we say that I'm so busy, I have no time to die, death is not going to wait. Death is going to come. And regardless of whether we are ready or not. So that I'll stop here. See if you have any questions or comments.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu, for the class. Very nice. So I have a few questions. Um, First of which, if I heard you correctly, which I may not have, you said in 9,500 years from now, Kali Yuga will become unlivable. Did I hear that correctly?
Correct.
So can you tell me the source of that, where that number is from, and what exactly will happen in 9,500 years?
Lord Chaitanya appeared 500 years back. Lord Chaitanya says that this Hare Krishna Mahamantra Sankirtana movement that is inaugurated will last for 10,000 years. Years have gone by since Lord Chaitanya's appearance. There are 9,500 years left. And at the end of that, whoever is following Srila Prabhupada in the really Lord Chaitanya, footsteps of Srila Prabhupada, they will all be taken back home, back to Godhead by Srila Prabhupada. But after that, the situation deteriorates so rapidly that it will not be possible for Prabhupada has said this himself, that after this period of time, the Kali Yuga would have progressed to such a great degree that it would no longer be possible to follow the principles of Krishna consciousness. That's the time we have left. We're planning on making multiple trips to planet Earth as a new species, hopefully human species. You have that many more, 95 more attempts, assuming we live 100 years each.
So this was from a lecture, or is this in?
The 10,000 years is from the Prabhupada lectures. That is where I got it from. But Prabhupada's lectures are always based on Shastra. So it may be, if somebody else can give the quote, maybe Chaitanya Charitamrita is possible, I'm not sure.
Right, and that's why Prabhupada says that he's given the law books for the next 10,000 years.
Exactly.
Because after that,
No longer be possible. Practice law.
okay, thank you, Guru. Can I ask another question?
Sure.
So, okay, so I'll stick to Kali Yuga for now. You said the problem is overeating, but not a shortage of food. But Prabhupada stresses so much that in Kali Yuga, there's a huge amount of shortage of grains, rice, fruits, milks, all these things.
There is mismanagement of resources. So there is a problem of mismanagement of resources, land, because it's been diverted for factories, right? So you have good land. You can irrigate that land and get food. But instead, we are using it for factory. So what happens? The land is not available for irrigation. So that grains are short. But that is not the reason why our vitality is reduced. That is not the reason why our lifespan is reduced. Our lifespan is being reduced. Here, what is being described here is, why is it that particular verse, right, is talking about Prayana Alpayusha Sadhya, Kalo has been engaged in. So there are various problems which are being indicated. He's trying to link the problems to the environment of Kali Yuga. So the problem of short lifespan is happening because of overeating problem. More because of overeating problem than because of short. If somebody has shortage of food, their lifespan is not. Like you're hearing about people who are dying of hunger. Actually, Prabhupada says no, that's not the case. People are not dying of hunger. People who eat more actually die faster than who are eating less.
Okay.
I know it's difficult to accept.
No, I understand. But Prabhupada also says that later on in Kali Yuga, when the lifespan becomes 20, 30 years old, that getting the necessities of life will become so difficult that people will die. So I think, I mean, to my knowledge, what you're saying right now is true. But as Kali Yuga progresses, food shortages, in terms of mismanagement, not in terms of actually the earth not applying enough, will also be a source of death for people. Thank you. My last question is, so you say, so people assume math is the perfect source. Like, okay, we know what one is, right? That's what you're saying about deductive reasoning.
Prabhupada says that. Math is always true.
Right. And then we're also saying that we should accept the Vedas as if it comes from the perfect source, which it does. But I'm wondering, for those who have experienced transcendental happiness in kirtan, let's say, right? They can then read in a scripture from 5,000 years ago that says, this is how you feel during kirtan. They have direct proof and feeling that they felt that. So then they can say, okay, I should read more of this. This thing probably has some knowledge. But for those that haven't experienced transcendental happiness or haven't experienced any transcendental feelings in Krishna consciousness, how can someone take that as a fact, as this comes from the perfect source?
Shraddha, a little bit of faith. So this is a question. Let us say that you're about to cross a road. You're a 5-year-old child. You're about to cross a road. How can you be sure that holding your mother's hand will lead you to safety? How can you be sure?
Faith
Yeah.
in your mother.
Faith in your mother, right? A child has an implicit faith in the mother, but the child does not have implicit faith in somebody else's mother. Does not have implicit faith, correct? But there is a concept of faith. Faith is not something that is strange to us. We are not strangers to faith. We use faith in everyday, like right now, in this very spot that we're sitting, we have faith in the people who constructed this structure. We have faith that they have constructed in a safe manner that the roof is not going to collapse on us any moment. Are you thinking about the roof collapsing right now? Because I said it, maybe.
Now I am.
Now you are, but until now you are not. Correct? That is faith. So we are not new to faith. We put our faith in at every step, at every moment, we are putting our faith in other people. So that's not new. We have to just give a little bit of faith, little bit, not too much, little bit of faith to approach sadhus, devotees, and then association of devotees, the faith grows.
Thank you so much, Guru. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So have you heard about the pandemic, and a lot of people say that it was written in Shastras that the time is going to come where a lot of people are going to die. And I don't know how true is that. So was that a glimpse sort of where there was, in the Kali Yuga age where a lot of people were committing different sorts of crimes? Was pandemic was one of those reasons to kind of like kill those people and then like start afresh, sort of? I don't know
Start
how
afresh, that's not the right thing I would say. Start afresh is not happening, right? It's not
Yeah,
really
so-
starting fresh.
is this like, was it
Was it foretold in scriptures that there will be a pandemic coming in this year in 2020? No, it is not like that. There is no reference that I'm aware of that Prabhupada is quoted. But Prabhupada did say, although to the point, and maybe those who remember this exactly might refresh my memory. But he mentioned something about 50 years from now, there will be a great calamity that will come upon America and the world, in fact. He had talked about a calamity that will appear, that will come upon the world 50 years from now. And certainly this is a calamity which has affected the whole world. But at the same time, Prabhupada's teachings are not to focus excessively on specific causes for material miseries. Because the material miseries we are experiencing, it appears like pandemic is a problem, but before pandemic, life was good, right? But that's not true. Life is always bad. Not only here, but even in higher planetary system, it's bad. Actually, in fact, Prabhupada says that suffering is actually a mercy of the Lord, because those who have little bit of pious credit also, when you undergo suffering, you remember the Lord. Right? There are 4 kinds of pious people who surrender to Krishna. What is the first one? Distressed. First one. There are 4 kinds of pious people, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, who surrender to me. That is Krishna. To Krishna. The first category is distressed, most common category. But the qualification is pious. If somebody has a little bit of pious credit also, and they undergo some distress, they remember Krishna, they surrender to him. Oh Lord, please save me. So we should not look at a pandemic or any kind of disease or difficulty that we are going through purely as a punishment for the misdeeds that we have done, which no doubt is. It is no doubt a result of our own actions in the past. But for a person who has taken up the process of Krishna consciousness, they see this with the vision of, this is the mercy of the Lord to bring me closer to the Lord. So that is how we see that. Because if I say that, yes, it was foretold, they'll say, okay, next, what is the next prophecy? What's going to please see my hand? Tell me when I'm going to die. When is my child going to get married? What will be the case like that, right? So that causes in the rat world, which is not the intention. Our goal should be to get out of the material world and go to the spiritual world. And we should see everything here with suspicion. Madhu Pandit Prabhu in his lecture says that sukha or happiness is like an Amazon package. Okay, that is wrapped in sukha, but you open the package, it's dukkha. So imagine like you're opening the door, there's a package, somebody rings the bell and goes away. It's Amazon. So you open the door and there's a beautiful, nice thing. Nice. I'm expecting that whatever I was expecting, I ordered something on Amazon. Maybe it was my scarf or something, whatever water bottle I ordered. Right? You with great anticipation, you go and open the door, open it, and then inside you get some bomb or something, right? So it is like that. So in the material world, we should be suspicious of anything that looks like sukha because it is packaged with dukkha. It is bound to happen. And similarly, if you see dukkha, that is not permanent either, right? So any difficulties that comes, any distress that comes, that's not permanent either. So the cycle of distress and happiness that we are seeing in our vision, that vision we should correct because that is actually neither happiness nor distress, it's all distress only. So the ability to see the distress in the material world is an item of knowledge. A person who is knowledgeable is able to see the misery in what appears to be happiness. Dukkha alayam ashashrutam. What is that item of knowledge?
Being able to see the misery.
Yeah, but that particular verse. Dukkha dosha anudarshanam. Janma mrityu jara vyadi. That means birth, death, old age, and disease. Right? We are not escaping from that. It has already been told. All of us are going to go through disease. Whether we do it collectively or individually, how does it matter? Right? I get flu, you get flu, but we both get flu on the same day, and that becomes big news. Like that's pandemic essentially, right? Everybody gets flu on the same day. Whatever, it's like extra flu ups. Please don't take it literally. Just trying to make a point. Like the fact that we all are going to have a disease, correct? That's been given. So when we see our life day to day life, when we wake up in the morning, brush your teeth, look at your face, diseased man. That's what you should see. About to die. That's what you should see. Okay. Old man or woman. That's what we should see. When we can see that instinctively, when we look at ourselves, that is called personal knowledge. But what do we see? So smart. So smart. People don't appreciate it. People have no eyes to see how smart you are. This is what we see. So, is ignorance. Stop here. Tantra Srimad Bhagavad Gita